Hello, everybody. I am super excited that you have joined me today. I am going to give YouTube just a few quick moments, a few quick seconds, actually, just to spread the news, just to let everybody know that, hey, I am live. It's going down. It's happening now. So you guys can come in and join. This is going to be a powerful and amazing and also an informative conversation about how to get ahead of the holiday blues. So if you're joining me, before I get into any content, can you please put in the chat box? Hey, Kendra, can you hear me? Please put a 1 in the chat box if you can hear me, because I don't want to be talking and y'all can't hear me. So I am going to be talking about how to get ahead of the holiday blues, and it's going to be a very informative and candid conversation. Probably a little bit different than the ones that I've done before and in the past. Nevertheless, it's still going to be exciting. You're still going to learn. There's still going to be all of the energy and all of the vibes. But as YouTube is sharing that I am currently going live and just letting some people join in and tap in with us today, put your state and your city. Kendra, where you at? What city and state you at? Where you at? Put your city and your state inside of the chat box just so I can know where y'all are tuning in from. Last time I went live, people were in here from the West Coast, from the East Coast. It was just everywhere. I said, okay, I see y'all pulling up. Kendra says ATL, Shawty. ATL. Well, y'all know I am currently in Los Angeles, California. So we got East Coast, we got West Coast in the building. Nevertheless, it's going to be a great conversation. Thank you for hopping on, because I know it is a little later there in the East Coast. So look, while people are joining in and coming in, let me just briefly introduce myself, because there's always people who are not familiar with me and familiar with my work, or who will catch the replay. So if you're watching the replay, hey y'all, thank you for joining me. So my name is Keandra Jackson. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm based here out of Los Angeles, California. I am also an award-winning speaker. I am a best-selling author. I am a media personality named as Forbes Next 1000. My work has been recognized by Beyonce and the NAACP. The NAACP. And I have the pleasure of really being passionate about healthy relationships and also mental health. And so as we are coming in to this holiday season, we got to talk about mental health, okay? It's not just about all the little glitz and the glamour and all, like, baby, we have to have candid conversations about mental health and how it impacts us, how it impacts our holiday season, how it impacts our loved ones, our families, our partners, our kids, our businesses, all of the things, right? And so before I get into the content for today, I want to let you guys know that I made a commitment to myself, and Kendra's on here as well, and she can vouch to you. I said that I will be going live at least once a month. So this conversation is going to be about managing the holiday blues and getting ahead of the holiday blues, but also too, next month and in December, we're going to be talking about how to have healthy relationships when your family members are a little toxic during the holiday season. Okay. And then we're also going to have a conversation about being single during the holiday season, when everybody else is booed up, when they got on their matching pajamas and you don't. How does that make you feel, right? So we're going to have really great conversations around the holidays. I know Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever you celebrate, the New Year's brings up a lot of emotions for people. And we want to make sure that everybody is handling things well. So I know y'all are probably like, why are we doing this so early, girl? Listen, the conversation today is getting ahead of the holiday blues. And as we can tell, it's not even Halloween yet. October 31st is not even passed yet. You talk about the holidays, girl. Typically what happens is after Halloween, and that's when all of the Christmas lights and the Christmas trees and the wreaths and all of that typically comes out. But listen, we're a little bit early, and I intentionally wanted to have this conversation early for you guys, because it is better to talk about these things ahead of time on the front end than the back end. When something happens, when something goes down, when your mental health is challenged, when you're feeling the type of way, when you're feeling the loss and all of the things that we're going to talk about today, you want to get ahead of the things. Too many times in therapy and just in general, hey Manuel, too many times we wait until things happen and then we try to fix it, right? It's like, oh, I'm depressed now, so let me try to find a therapist. Now, I want you to find a therapist regardless of where you're at on this process. But if we would have like noticed some signs ahead of time and the anxiety ahead of time and the toxic relationship ahead of time and just kind of been more aware, we can get ahead of these things and we won't have to be blindsided when it comes on us so heavily at the last minute, so to speak. So I intentionally use the conversation and the words. Oh yeah, by the way, y'all, I don't know if y'all seen that. I have supers now. So supers is where you can literally make a small monetary contribution on my live chats, on my videos, on my shorts, if you are enjoying my content. So if you want to support your girl and, want to have more conversations like this to help, keep the energy going, feel free to bless you, okay? Feel free to bless me, okay? I receive all of the blessings. Nevertheless, so I intentionally included the holiday blues, and some of y'all are not familiar with that term for a reason. I could have said like getting ahead of your mental health, before the holidays or whatever, but holiday blues is something that a lot of people experience. And what it basically is temporary feelings of depression, it's temporary feelings of anxiety that happens during the holiday season specifically. So what this is, it's because we are surrounded and inundated with excess shopping, with social events, with family and friend expectations. And to be honest with you, it's mad stressful. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot to manage, especially if you got multiple hats and things that you do. It's just a lot on your plate. Not to mention if you are somebody who recently had a loss or a death or a major or a significant shift in your life. Oh, baby, the holiday seasons will trigger the heck up out of you, okay? And especially if you're someone who often reminisces or kind of, like your past memories tend to pop up a little bit, this can be a hard time for a lot of people. Just to give you guys a very real and candid example, my grandmother, it's been almost a decade since she passed away, right? And so she was the matriarch of our family, right? She was the glue. She held everything together. She cooked all the food. We did all of the things with her. And ever since she passed away, holidays ain't been the same. Can I keep it 100, right? Like it just, like we try to get together with family. We do potluck and everybody try to remake her dishes, but it just hasn't been the same. And every holiday, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every New Year, I think about her and I'm just like, oh my God, I really wish my granny was here. Like, I wish my granny made this dressing, okay? I wish my granny made this mac and cheese, okay? And not to say that, the other people who's making the food isn't good, but it's like, it's not my granny's. So it brings up and it kind of like triggers you to really go and tap into some of those past memories that you have. And sometimes it can be a joyous experience. It doesn't have to be negative, right? I have really great memories and we'll laugh and kiki at some of the crazy and funny things that my grandma has said, right? But also too, it's kind of like, oh, she's not here, heartbreak. Like, I miss you. So those are just real examples of what can happen and what can trigger you around the holiday season, especially if someone passes away, especially if you experience a loss or a death, loss of a child, loss of a job. There's just so many things that can happen around the holiday season, a breakup. I told y'all we're not talking about that today, but we're going to have a whole conversation about that because breakups is a thing around the holidays as well, right? If you're used to spending it with an ex-partner for years and years, and now you come into the Christmas party and you don't have your matching pajamas on with your boo. You the only one single. What do you do, right? Kenya said, yes, that's the same for family. Absolutely. Like, what do you do when your heart is broken and you still got to show up and try to do and be all of the things? So let me share with you guys what some of the symptoms of the holiday blues are. And I know some of y'all are like, when you think of the blues, people are like, is this like music? And somebody messaged me on Instagram, was like, so do you mean like holiday music? And I'm like, no, not holiday blues, like blues music, like the holiday blues, like you're sad, like you're down, like you're not feeling like yourself. So essentially some of the symptoms that you might feel or what you might be experiencing and going through while you might be experiencing the holiday blues is some of these. Now, some of y'all are like, I ain't got the holiday blues. I ain't never gonna have the holiday blues. This ain't for me. And that's fine, right? But you have other people who've never heard of this. You have other people who probably experiencing this for years and didn't have a name for it. And you have people that will experience it. They just don't know it yet. Okay. So you might want to go ahead and like, comment, and share this with somebody who's going to need it. So some of the symptoms are just being tired, lack of energy and motivation. And I'm not talking about your normal, just like, oh, I don't feel like getting up and going to work today. I'm talking about extreme tiredness. I'm talking about you have no desire to do any of the things. You're also feeling this level of frustration on the inside of you. You can't always pinpoint what it is or where it's coming from, but you feel so frustrated at fill in the blank, whatever that thing is for you. It could be a loss. It could be a death. It could be because you're single. It could be because you're dealing with toxic family members. It could be a whole bunch of things. Nevertheless, you want to know, like, I'm a little frustrated going on here. You also could potentially feel isolated and lonely. This is a very common one, especially if you may not have family or friends that are close to you, because of course, some people move away, your family's not close, or you don't have the financial resources to travel and go back home, or it's just a toxic situation and you're not trying to be around your family anyway. Whatever your situation and your story is, isolation and literally like isolating yourself, like don't call me, don't text me, don't nothing me is a thing. And it kind of puts you in a downward spiral. And it's actually something that you shouldn't do, but we'll talk about that later. Also, there is a level of sadness. And the sadness can come from grief. It can come from loss. But sometimes it's just because things are different and there's a shift happening. And sometimes you may, again, not be able to pinpoint it. And you also, like I already mentioned, have this sense of loss, this sense of grieving, the kind of like what I talked about with my grandma not too long ago, like a few minutes ago. Like that is a very normal thing. So I'm not saying that these are all of the symptoms, but these are some of the symptoms that you experience. Now, I want to be very clear that the holiday blues is not mental illness. The holiday blues is not technically a mental health diagnosis, right? We have this big old book in therapy called the DSM, baby. And it has all of the you see how thick this is a thick baby, okay? It has all of the diagnoses, the illnesses, all of the mental illnesses in this book. Baby, holiday blues ain't up in here. Holiday blues is not in here, okay? And so this is just something that is not as extensive, that is not as pervasive as clinical depression and someone who really experiences generalized anxiety. This is just something that's more temporal, and it's something that's more temporary that people actually go through. Now, I want to give you how can I say this? I want to give you a distinction between this and something else. I'm not going to get too psychology and nerd it out on y'all, but there's something called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And that is in the DSM. By the way, this is the holiday blues and seasonal affective disorder are two different things, y'all. Now, it can be intertwined. Some people might experience both, but SAD, we don't call it SAD because seasonal affective disorder, right? That's the acronym. SAD is more extensive. SAD is basically when you feel sad, literally feel sad due to there not being as much sunshine and as much light where you live during the summer, during the winter months. So you know how in the winter, depending on where you live, it's just a little bit more darker, a little bit more gloomy. The sun ain't really out like that. It's just meh. People have seasonal affective disorder and they're not able to manage that. So it sends them into a for real depression. It sends them into for real anxiety to the point where it's impacting their life. That's very different than the holiday blues, which is more temporary, it's not as intense, and it's really just around the holiday season. So the question is, how do you manage this? How do you manage the holiday blues, right? Because that's what we're really here to talk about. I have 3 quick tips that I want to give you guys that's going to help you be able to manage it. And then, of course, if anybody has any Q&As, if anybody has any questions, we can do a live Q&A and I can get your questions answered live and in color. So the first thing that you need to remember around the holidays, how to manage the holiday blues, is to do you. Do you, boo? This essentially means you need to set time aside to pour into yourself. Oftentimes during the holiday season, we worried about everybody else. Oh, I got to get these gifts. I got to pay for this. I got to check in on my mama. I got to cook this food. I got to host this party. I got to have Friendsgiving. I have to manage all of these different things. And we forget about ourselves. And this is where that self-care comes in. This is where taking care of yourself comes in, making sure that you're eating properly, the simple things, making sure that you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're doing things that actually bring you joy and not doing things for other people. This is so important. So when you alleviate or when you leave out yourself in this equation, you're going to feel all of the symptoms that we talked about, the frustration, the annoyance, the isolation. You're going to be annoyed because you got too many things on your plate and you're not handling them well. So this is where those positive coping skills come in. If you do not know what a positive coping skill is, it's basically how you handle stuff. That's the quick and dirty version. You want to handle things in a positive way. Typically, when something comes our way, we're either handling them in a positive way or we're handling them in a negative way. The negative way, no shade to anybody, but it might be drugs, it might be excessive sex, it might be, whatever you have going on. And I went to the extreme on that one. But sometimes the positive coping skills is just sitting down, relaxing, taking some deep breaths, talking to a trusted friend, figuring out your own thoughts and feelings, getting grounded, getting centered, praying, writing in your journal. These are all tangible tips that you can take when you're trying to make sure that you're managing this holiday blues. So do you, while you worried about everybody else, make sure you tap in on your calendar and put in some me time. For real, like me time. Next thing that you want to think about and figure out and how to manage during the holiday season is not isolating yourself. Do not isolate yourself. And I know some people are naturally isolated, as I mentioned before, because some people are literally away from family. They live in a small city or a town, and they're by themselves or they don't have any loved ones or whatever. I get that. There's exceptions to every rule. But majority of us got family or friends or at least one other person somewhere on the face of this planet that we can tap into and spend quality time with. Now, when you're feeling the holiday blues, when you're feeling the type of way, when you're like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't have the motivation, I'm frustrated, I am all of the things, you typically kind of don't want to be around people, right? Your MO and your motive is to be like, nah, I'm gonna stay home and just be by myself. But that is probably the worst thing that you can do during this time frame. And I'm not saying force yourself to be around people that you shouldn't be around, but in order to combat this holiday blues, you have to push yourself outside of your limit. So if you typically wasn't going to go nowhere for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, push yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to go to the holiday function, but I'm going to stay for like an hour or two, really kind of put those parameters and those boundaries around what you're going to do, but don't stay home by yourself. Because if you stay home by yourself, you are going to be miserable, you're going to be crying, and you're just going to reinforce the very thing that's making you feel a type of way. We call this a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're having the holiday blues, you're feeling lonely and isolated, you're staying home, and then you're feeling the type of way that nobody is around you. Well, guess what? You chose to stay home, right? So this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially. So you have to make sure that you are pushing yourself outside of your limits and really getting around people that care about you. That's the key, right? I know a lot of us spend time with people who don't care about us, right? And we feel forced to go around certain family members because it's blood, or that's your grandma, that's your uncle, that's your daddy. You need to be over there and spend time. You only see them once a year or whatever. Be around somebody that cares about you just as much as you care about them. Y'all know I always talk about relationships, healthy relationships, and not just romantic ones, but there's reciprocity in healthy relationships, right? Like a giving of yourself. And also there needs to be a pouring in, right? I need to be giving out as much as I'm getting back. And not to say that it has to be in equal amounts, but you have to feel like there's some type of reciprocity and some type of reciprocity into this relationship. Because if you feel like you're giving and giving some more, giving some more after that, and giving some more after that, and you're getting absolutely, positively nothing in return, baby, Houston, we have a problem. That means we need to reevaluate this relationship. We need to reevaluate what's going on here, because 9 times out of 10, baby, it's not healthy. And who wants to intentionally be in healthy conversations? I specifically talked this past weekend, I keynoted at an event here in Los Angeles called EmpowerCon. And I had the privilege of talking about healthy relationships, having healthy relationships across the board. And one of the things that I told them, and a whole bunch of people came up to me at my vendor table afterwards, and they were like, oh my God, thank you for saying that. I literally told them, just because you are in relationship with someone who is blood related, that does not give you the permission to continue to be in a toxic and an unhealthy relationship. Just because they're blood don't mean you got to stay in a toxic and unhealthy relationship. So y'all do with that what y'all may. Okay, that's blessing somebody right there. Like, that's something that y'all probably needed to be reminded of as you're going into this holiday season, because I know that there is at least one person in your family or your friend group that's like, I don't really rock with them. Our relationship is a little rocky. You do not have to be around or be in relationships that are toxic and unhealthy just because you're blood related. Boom. And the last one is to don't overdo it financially. Back when I was seeing clients, because your girl didn't retire from seeing clients. Essentially, I haven't seen clients for therapy in 3 years, y'all. But one of the things that was always an issue around the holiday season is people feeling overwhelmed because they know they overdid it financially. They know they don't have the money, but they buying all the extra gifts because they want their kid to have an amazing Christmas, right? They ain't got the money, but they still swiping that credit card to fund, the family function or the family dinner and buy all of the groceries. They overdo it, because what happens when the holiday season is over? What happens when January comes and you're looking at them billing statements? You're looking at them credit card statements. You're looking at that negative balance, and you're like, then you're going to have buyer's remorse, right? Have you ever had buyer's remorse where you bought something and then a week or two later, or, when the excitement wore off about it, you're like, dang, I really didn't have the money for that. And I really shouldn't have bought that. That's what a lot of people experience. And this contributes to their holiday blues. And now, because social media is so intense and so tricky, right? Everywhere you scroll on Instagram, on YouTube, on all of these different platforms, you're being inundated with ads. I can't tell y'all how many times over the last 24 hours I was on TikTok and the same freaking ad keeps popping up about this little moisturizer that everybody's going crazy for right now over social media, right? I still didn't buy it. I'm proud of myself. Okay, like, pat on the back. But this is us being inundated with so many products and services, and people are going to be trying to sell you stuff left and right. Figure out what your budget is, okay? And try your best not to overspend when it comes to gifts, when it comes to parties, whether you're throwing the parties or attending the parties. I know my friend always want to have like this ugly sweater Christmas party, and it just be a lot. And I'll be like, woo, I don't know if I want to go. When it comes to food, groceries is high, okay? Like high right now. I remember, I think it was on Instagram, I seen somebody say, Thanksgiving is looking like a Taco Tuesday. Because groceries are so high. They was like, we ain't doing no turkey. We ain't doing none of the traditional Thanksgiving stuff. Baby, it's going to be Taco Tuesday because that's all we can afford. So I want you to be aware of impulsive buying. Do not buy on impulse. I'm big on creating lists, like handwritten lists, thinking about and laying out the things that I actually want to buy and creating that list and sticking to it. I do the same thing when I go to the grocery store. One of the best tips that I could give you is never go to the grocery store hungry, and also always have a list. So before I go in there, just like, oh, I want this and I need this and then I look up and I'm spending $5,000 million quadrillion on something. I have my list and I be checking myself like, oh yeah, oh no, that's not on my list. Keandra, focus. I be talking to myself like, focus, Keandra, stay focused, right? We gonna have to have that same energy when it comes to impulse buying on social media or impulse buying because you see somebody else got it and oh, you see what he doing and what she doing and what they doing in their own lanes. Have tunnel vision. Stay focused, baby, because their budget is not your budget. Your budget is not their budget. Okay. So don't try to be like everybody else because essentially you're going to put yourself into this downward spiral that is not going to be helpful long term. And the beautiful part about the holiday blues is that it tends to lift after the holiday season is up. So there is great news. Okay. If you're like, dang, Keandra, this is a lot, all of these symptoms, and I got to do this to combat it. There's great news. The great news is that it gets better. The great news is that after the holiday season is over, typically people are able to bounce back and get back to their regularly scheduled program. They're able to get back on track and not be worried about their toxic family members and all of that other stuff. They're able to manage their emotions where they're not feeling the stress and the anxiety and they're not as tired and feeling, all of the grief and the loss and the isolation. They're not feeling that as much anymore because all of those pressures we talked about, societal pressures, are lifted, right? And so this is just a very unique season every single year. And to be honest with you, this happens to people every year. So this is why we're having this conversation early, because we need to get ahead of this thing. If you know you are one of the people who experienced the holiday blues, baby, be glad that we're talking about it at the end of October before Thanksgiving hits, right? Because then you're going to be in a situation that you don't want to be in. So I think that is probably the gist and the overall way of managing the holiday blues, how to make sure that you're not just going downward, because the flip side to this is for real depression, really not being able to get out the bed, really not eating or eating too much, really feeling sad and crying. That is going to push you over to actual clinical depression. And so we are trying to manage this ahead of time. So as I am wrapping, do you guys have any questions? I want to chat with y'all. Ooh, let me see who's still here. We got Manuel, Kendra, Kenya. Who else is in the building? Y'all was quiet during this whole situation. Any questions? If so, I would love to answer them live, and specifically questions about mental health, the holidays, the holiday blues, because we are definitely going to have a more in-depth conversation about toxic family members and how to manage that around the holidays. And also when you're single, because that's a thing, right? Everybody's like, I want to show up to the Christmas party with my matching pajamas with my bae. And it's like, what if you ain't got no bae? What if all your family members are asking you, when you get married, when you having kids? How do you handle that? Because it can be a lot, right? So that is going to be a really great conversation that we are going to have soon. So make sure you stay tuned, stay connected on my page. If you have not subscribed, like, comment, hit that notification bell. You will be notified of every time that not only where I drop a new video, but also too when I go live, so you don't miss it. Kenya said, are we getting into when your boo is not your boo during we absolutely will, because that's a part. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but that's absolutely a thing, right? I was talking to someone maybe about a week ago, and they were talking about there's so much pressure when you're kind of like in that weird dating phase. You're just now getting to know somebody, like you barely know them for like a week or 2 or 3. And the holiday season come up, Thanksgiving comes up, Christmas comes up, or their birthday comes up. He was like, because I was talking to my homeboy, he was like, that is the most difficult season, the most difficult thing to navigate. Because it's like, you don't really know this person, but then you're also trying to get to know them and you kind of like them, but you don't want to come off as cold-hearted if you don't give them a gift for their birthday or for Christmas. Like, it's a whole entire thing, right? And also, too, there isn't a label on it yet. You're not technically my boyfriend or technically my girlfriend. So it's like, what do you do? How do you navigate? Do I even want to be around your family? Are you going to invite me? Like, there's just so many things. And baby, we are absolutely going to talk about it because it gets so layered and so juicy. But I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are experiencing is just really the sadness that comes along with being alone during the holiday season. Maybe when you thought that you were going to be booed up or thought that you were going to be with somebody and it didn't work out, whether there was a breakup or you just single for another year, like those are real conversations that can be very triggering to people if you don't know how to manage it and you don't know what to say and you didn't prepare yourself on the comeback that you're going to have for your family member. Latasha, hey, boo, hey. Kenya said, oh, because I'm a January baby, so we all listen. January comes around real quick, and also the New Year is a thing too. Like you ain't got nobody to kiss on New Year's Eve or whatever it's called. Like it's just a whole bunch of things that we can talk about. Emmanuel says, yeah, it's tricky because you don't want to come off too strong nor too friend-like, right? Especially if you really like the person, right? And you want to see where it's gonna go, see if there's potential of you guys being in a relationship, to not buy them a birthday gift or to not buy them something for Christmas or invite them to the function. It's tricky. And this is where that communication has to come in, right? Before Thanksgiving even come, maybe after Halloween, you need to be talking with that person and being like, okay, so the holidays is coming up. How you want to navigate it? So your birthday is coming up. How you want to navigate this? If I got you something, how would you feel? If I didn't get you something, how would you feel? Like these are real conversations that we don't have enough because we're either scared, nervous, we think they're going to run the person away or whatever our emotion is. But we have to get better at communication because that literally solves so many problems that could have been avoided in the first place. Do you guys have any other questions? Because if not, we can hop off. But I am going to scrizzle and see if there's anything else in the chat box. But if not, that's okay too. I'm just glad y'all here and listening in. And for the people who watching the replay, hey. Yep, I don't see any new comments. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedule, whether you're on the West Coast, the East Coast, whatever time it is there, you could have been doing something else outside of being on here with me. Emmanuel said expectations for mind reading is a killer. Ooh! One of the, I don't know if y'all ever heard of the 4 Agreements. It's by Don, I think his name is Don Luis Ruiz or something like that, child. Google it. It's called the 4 Agreements. One of the 4 agreements is to don't assume. Baby, when you don't assume, it changes the game. Like he uses that as like a pillar and a staple in your life. Like just don't assume. Don't make assumptions about people. Don't make assumptions about what you think they were going to do, what you think they were going to say, where you thought they were going to go. Speak up, say something, communicate, because typically people, again, like Emmanuel said, people are not mind readers, right? And we have to understand that we don't know what's going on in your head. And I don't have time to be playing this guessing game with you, right? This goes back to effective two-way communication. It goes both ways. I think we've all been guilty of that, right? We've all assumed, like, I already know what he's going to say. I already know how she's going to rock. I already know what's going to happen. I already know where we're going. This is like, you don't know nothing. I might have flipped the script on you this time and did something different or said something different, right? And so that's why it's important for us to kind of just come into it with an open space. And the best way to do this is to remain curious, right? Instead of being like, I already know, just operate from a place of curiosity, of like, you're trying to seek to understand. Emmanuel says, been guilty of wanting things to happen organically, but that looks different to both of us. Yeah, that organic stuff. Woo! Because I think we have been inundated with these fairy tale stories, right? Whether that's Disney or these movies out here where we're thinking like, oh, it's just supposed to be natural and just flow. And as soon as I see him and he sees me, we're going to lock eyes and it's going to be love at first sight. And we're going to scroll into the sunset happily ever after, holding hands. Like this is what has been indoctrinated and ingrained in our minds since we freaking came out the womb, literally, right? And when stuff don't happen like that, when it looks differently, when it's a little bit more difficult, because we're literally essentially bringing 2 people together, with different backgrounds, upbringing, religious beliefs, perspectives, schooling, all of those things. And you're trying to bring two people's worlds together. And it can be a little tricky, right? And so we have to kind of just like combat those ideologies that says like, oh, it's supposed to be organic, it's supposed to be so easy, it's supposed to be, because I know plenty of love stories that started off rocky AF. I'm talking about A to the F Rocky, right? But now they're in a great space. They're loving. They're like, it's just beautiful, right? And I think even, and not to, beat a dead horse, but even that show is no longer on OWN anymore, but the show called Black Love, where it was basically like a show with all Black couples and then we're basically sharing their story. I remember a thread, because, I'm looking at stuff from a, what's it called? Relationship lens. I just remember seeing a thread between the whole entire episode and all of the couples of like, dang, a lot of their relationships started off rocky. A lot of them were like, oh, I really didn't like him at first. I really didn't like her at first. Or they was in a relationship and I wasn't trying to have, like, it was just always something in the beginning. But then God did what God's going to do and he put the people together that's supposed to be together, So we can talk about that all day. That's why you need to make sure you pull up when we start talking about singleness. So I'll take a poll right now for the few people that's still on here. Do y'all want next month in November to be about toxic family members and dealing with them during the holidays? Or do y'all want to tackle being single in November? Because whatever one we do in November, we're going to do the opposite one in December. So do y'all want in November, do y'all want being single during the holidays, or do y'all want toxic family members? I'm going to let y'all choose. And then that way I can make sure that you guys are on, you guys are prepared, and it's something that you guys want versus it's something being that I want. So let me know in the chat box what y'all want, even if you're watching the replay and you're like, woo, baby, we need to talk about this. Emmanuel says being single. I'm here for it. That's my lane. Okay, that's fine. So we can definitely talk about being single next time in November, and then we'll talk about toxic family members in December. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, for staying around, for commenting, for liking, for sharing, for being an active participant. Share this with somebody who needs it. And I will see you guys next month where we're talking about being single during the holidays. Bye.